For today's tabletop testing, we're going to be looking at Arceus Giratina with some great new upgrades. In the new format, you get the new Iron Leaves EX, which acts as an extra pivot in the deck. It can take some energy, yoink it for itself, and throw itself into the active position. Plus, it gives you grass type coverage into Charizard EX. So now with this Iron Leaves, plus the option to have maximum belt in addition to Giratina's Lost Impact, we can deal 330 damage 2 times in a game into that Charizard with those two within the deck list. Even with the loss of Path of the Peak, Judge can still be a great disruption option, and we have the League Headquarters, which is nowhere near as good as Path, but can still be a headache, certainly in this matchup where it's going to be up against an all-basic deck. There are going to be a number of mostly basic attacking decks in this format, so having the Headquarters does seem like a really valuable option. Possibly a different Starbirth option is the ERI supporter that we have in the deck list. Sometimes this can catch rare candies and Ultra Balls from setup-based decks. It could also be great at getting rid of superior energy retrievals in Chien-Pao or Goldengo lists. And hey, you never know, sometimes you just catch an ace-spec from your opponent as well. This is a very powerful supporter card, possibly an alternative to the Judge supporter from your Starbirth based on how strong your own hand is, and generally just can catch your opponent off guard. The other new card in the deck is the Mist Energy. It can protect you from all effects of attacks. This is to help out against Roaring Moon EX, so they simply can't gouge through all of your bulky V-Stars. Mist Energy could also work against opposing Giratinas if we were to play the Radiant Gardevoir in the deck list, but I'll talk about that and a few other options at the end of the video. It's going to be coming up against a Moon Hands build of Lost Zone box where we have those quad Mirage Gates as well as quad Super Rod in the deck list to try and power up these two attackers. Roaring Moon being that beat stick option to get through high hit point Pokemon for multi-prize KOs, and Iron Hands being the means of getting multi-prize knockouts on lower hit point Pokemon in the best case scenario with the Amp You Very Much. We're playing the Forest Hill Stone Raikou package just for a little bit of extra consistency and having a slightly lower maintenance, higher damage output option. Prime Catcher fits in really nicely in the deck list because we want to be using the likes of Colress and Roxanne throughout the majority of the game, so having an item-based Gust is massive. Buddy Poffin is a solid card just to get our Comfey into the mix as early as possible to begin flower selecting, and Emergency Board is a fantastic tool card that we can take advantage of here. Comfey, of course, being the main contender here. With that 1 retreat cost, we can swing this onto a Comfey so that in between turns when our lower hit point Pokemon are getting frequently KO'd, we can go back into a free retreating Comfey to guarantee us a few extra cards off the top deck, which is really important for a deck like this, which can be vulnerable to the likes of Judge and Iono throughout the game. Once again, I'll talk about a few other options for this list later on in the video, but first, check out the battles. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code, OmniPoke. So, getting into the games then, it's going to be Shai on the right playing Arceus Giratina, and I am playing the Lost Zone box deck on the left. Shai has the opening Ultra Ball, which can get rid of a grass energy as well as a boss's orders, which means he definitely has energy in hand, so he can get the ideal turn 1 for any Arceus player, which is simply develop the V on the bench and get an attachment onto it, so you're threatening the turn 2 Starbirth Trinity Nova combination. I think I also saw Giratina V in hand, so he's going to have a pretty decent opener here, to be honest with you. I think there's a bit barrel in hand for next turn as well. Does end up just, he's actually going to end up benching the Giratina and then passing things over to me. I have the turn 1 Buddy Poffin and a Comfey lead, so it's going to be pretty good for us to get our flower selectings online. I'm going to do the routine thing of checking out some basic energy because that's always a crucial resource in the deck, knowing what I have access to for Mirage Gates and also inform my flower selectings. It's still a stressful deck to play, no doubt. Still going to be one of the trickier ones in the format, but basically all the attackers are the same from the previous metagame, so if you're already comfortable with Lost Box of the current meta, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to adjust things to the new post-rotation. There is the new emergency board, so I can get a free retreat pivot for another Comfey. Going to get rid of a Mirage Gate. It was up against Cramorant, and that's why we had to go down that direction. We're going to Pokeyear, and we do hit Colress after a couple flower selectings, which is nice. So it looks like we're just honing in on that turn 1 Spit Innocently. This will get us to 4 cards in the Lost Zone, but I think I'm just lacking a switch out right now. I see Super Rod, I see some energy, I see Switch Cart in there, so I do have to take it. Looks like I get rid of a Switch and a Lightning Energy, so that I can cram and use Switch Cart here to still take a knockout. Yeah, it's just going to be a regular Switch. I end up opting for that instead, which is basically the same thing here. But we are going to Spit Innocently, take an initial prize, and basically try and starve Shai of getting Bibarel into the mix. And Shai actually, off the top, needed that Iono because his only other draw in hand was a Bibarel. So off the Iono, he is living. He is living his best life now. Gets straight into the mix, gets the Arc V-Star, and is able to Starbirth now. So with double V-Star developed just from one top deck of Iono, he is straight back into this game, and also hand-disrupting us post-Chorus. So that's looking pretty good. He can immediately bounce back with a prize here and start getting to work on at least this Giratina. He might want to get another Arceus V into the mix just to have easier attacks that he can sort of chain with Arceus V-Stars, knowing that Giratina is quite a resource-intensive Pokemon to sort of weave into the mix. We also look to get the League headquarters down. That is the stadium choice in our Arctina build right now. Looks like it is going to be double turbo energy and does re-establish Bidoof, which is something I'm not too sad to see, honestly. It also goes for the counter catcher, so yeah, it's just trying to starve our draw power as much as possible. Gets rid of a skateboard, which is a pretty vital resource, and loads up that Giratina with 3 energy. There's a Psychic Energy in between those two grass sort of peeking out there. And yeah, also eventually did do the League headquarters. Shai playing a little bit out of sequence, but you can see what the game plan was. Make life as difficult as possible for us. I end up having to get rid of Iron Hands, which is a little bit scary, but I do think I've been sort of given that license because there's a Bidoof on the board. I can just try and go finish off the Bidoof or Bibarel at some point with Sableye and just go through 2 V-Star. My map is basically all planned out there. I have Nespal for another Comfey here. We have had a couple selectings early on with selecting into Switch Cart Select. Water Energy now having to hit the Lost Zone. We're at 6 cards in the Lost Zone right now. Have that extra Switch Cart, which does get us to 7 to unlock Mirage Gates. There is a Raikou V, so I can attack with this with Mirage Gates and a turn attachment as well. It's going to be pretty pricey though because the headquarters is about. But thanks to the double turbo energy, I will stay out of range from the Arceus V-Star at the very least. That's why you're seeing some funky attachments go onto this Raikou, because I need the 3rd energy to get around League headquarters. Fortunately, I do have the other emergency board. I can get the quick fleet-footed card in as well, and then we can just swing with the Lightning Rondo for 140 damage, which is looking pretty reasonable for that 2 shots. Shai has not much going on in hand, but Eri's a 3-card hand, and look what he hits. He hits Counter Catcher and Prime from my 3-card hand. That is, we call that content, to be honest. That is really rough. That means that my only other gusting throughout the entire game is from 1 copy of Boss's Orders, which is horrific. Shai's going to retreat and then re-establish Double Turbo just to send my Raikou into the discard pile in 1 hit with the Giratina. I'm really just trying to keep up that pressure. Shai knows that my hand is absolutely terrible, so I'm completely living on flower selectings here. Because he aeried away, and look at this. It was Boss's Orders up against, well, it was up against Roaring Moon, so I had to get rid of my only remaining gusting card from my first flower selecting. I'm going to debate and go into another Comfey here. I'm going to get rid of Darkness Energy and get Radiant Greninja out now. Let's just try and cycle through this deck. I really desperately need to get into Chorus to do stuff. And that Eri, what a back-breaking card. Sometimes you can time it with the help of Squirvet Barrel combos or with your Starbirth, but sometimes you just randomly do it because you had nothing better to do on your turn. And even then, it can really change games. For Lost Zone players, it's almost always horrific because you're always keeping the good stuff, which normally means rods and gates. And in this case, it was Prime Catcher as well as Counter Catcher, which is horrible. The Greninja did get us into Chorus, which is exceptional. I can probably make something happen now. It's going to be Rod Chorus, so that tells you that the top 5 cards were really, really good. Sableye into the Super Rod, into the Mirage Gate. There's still that League headquarters that I have to contend with, so yeah, the gate is going to put 2 energy onto this Sableye. Which is pretty disgusting that I'm having to commit so many resources. First into a Raikou, now into a Sableye. I think it means I have 1 gate remaining. There's a Switch Cart, and it is going to be the Lost Mine, KOing the Bidoof and also putting the remaining 6 onto the Arceus. So I'm at least going okay in terms of a prize race here, but I'm kind of also on fumes, because I'm pretty sure we have 1 gate left. So yeah, just not being able to bounce this League headquarters has been so punishing for us. But the prize map is there for me to win in 2 attacks, in theory. And the one thing that is awkward for Shai here is that he might have to get rid of 2 more energy this turn, and that would be a little bit dicey, to be honest. Especially if he doesn't have an attachment in hand. I think his only supporter has been Iono, and he's been holding off from playing that for a couple turns. He eventually does go for it. He's going to see just 3 cards, no energy there. And that means he has an awkward choice. He can obviously just get rid of 1 on the damaged Arceus quite comfortably, and get rid of a grass, but he's just really running low on resources now. He's pretty much committed everything into this Tina. I'm going to send up a Confe that doesn't have the emergency board, and that probably indicates that I have Switch in hand. So I'm going to have a look at some resources here. I do have ways of knocking out this Giratina in 1 hit, and the Roaring Moon would be that way. The Forest Seal Stone is going to get pitched. It does find me a Darkness Energy, though, which is pretty solid. I have Switch into another Confe. Poffin is an easy choice to pitch. And let's have a look at what else I can string together here. We must have a pretty thin deck by now. The discard pile's looking pretty decent. The Lost Zone is massive in terms of the amount of resources in there right now. You can see I'm just juggling things up with... going to have 1 more peak with Flower Selecting. Going to get rid of a Nest Ball here. Already have 1 in the hand. We finally see a bounce to the League headquarters, which I think is definitely a big piece here. So I can now Nest Ball out Roaring Moon, and I have Mirage Gate with Psychic Dark. I have Darkness Energy in hand, so I can make the heroic Frenzied Gouging here. It would be very, very risky to do this in most situations, but because Shai has no energy remaining, I can put myself down to just the 30 hit points left and say, well, can you find a way to deal that 30 damage whilst moving this 0 energy Arceus? And I think the answer is going to be pretty much no from the looks of things. So we've managed to just about scrape it out here. Some very panicky last-minute Lost Zones have finally got me there. And after that Eri, I never saw myself winning this game, to be honest with you. It's pretty insane that we were able to make this happen. It's going to be a boss's orders into Greninja and just a pass, but I do still have energy remaining to get an attack in. And just showing Shai there that I still had rods and chorus and all sorts of ways to get my Roaring Moon back into the active to finish off the Arceus. So a nice win, game 1 for the Lost Box deck. Looks like there was a mulligan from Shai, and we are getting into the second game. Shai has the Arceus V start with a double turbo in hand. Also has Nest Ball and Capturing Aroma, so again, a really good start for him. You can get the early Bidoof developed, which is always solid. Let's see if he can accompany it with anything else. Once again, it's the Giratina, so pretty much the same start as last time. And looks like I also have the same start as last time with the Confe into the Buddy Poffin to get some more Confe developed and get my card draw underway, as well as fueling that Lost Zone. As you can see, once again, checking out those energy cards, as well as other key resources that I have access to. I think in this game, I'm also checking out the Radiant Greninjas and the prize cards as well, so I think that's going to be another thing to keep a close eye on, to get that out of those prize cards as quickly as possible, because that's another key component of our draw power, and also just recycling our energy as we draw through the deck as well. We have a number of our attacking Pokemon in the opening hand. Going to start things off with a Colress. Looks like another Colress in that top 5, never a bad thing to see. I will also try to juggle some of these energy cards, is going to be important. See what we can and can't afford to get rid of. Going to get rid of a Switch and an energy card. We immediately play that Hisuian, so we did see it early, and it was for Greninja, which is phenomenal. He's freed, liberated. And with a couple energy in hand, I should be able to draw a few cards here. With Greninja, first of all, going to throw the Psych Energy away. Then we're going to see the Flower Selecting. And everything's a decision, especially when you start seeing my first 2 selects were difficult, which means my future selects become more and more difficult as we go as well. I can Nest Ball into Cramorant, so I'm once again looking for that tempo play of getting an early poke in with Cram. I can switch cards into another Confe here. This does get me to 4 cards in the Lost Zone. A Lightning Energy does have to go. I am going to turn attach, retreat. And I'm also going to proactively bench this Raikou. This is mostly because I'm worried about Judge, and I want to give myself Forest Seal Stone outs to get into the game. And Shai, once again, already established double turbo, so I'm not expecting any early one-hit KOs on this Raikou for a little while, so I'm hoping it can possibly even be a tank or a sponge to possibly even finish off this Arceus, depending on how wide he goes with his bench. The Capturing Aroma hits heads, which means Shai does have access to his V-Star and will now launch a Starbirth. We're seeing the League hit HQ once again spied early. And was it alongside a Judge? That's a pretty likely choice. Yep, it is going to be the Judge. Definitely makes sense, like Colressed, and especially when you see such vital resources going from Colress and from Flower Selectings, you can always assume that the cards they're keeping and using, outside of the ones that I had to insta-play to get this early game Cram Swing, are all really useful cards, right? Because they're up against other good cards that find their way into the Lost Zone. If it was just things like other Buddy Poppers and things, it's like, it's kind of whatever. You don't really have a idea of what they have available, but when it's really good things hitting the Lost Zone, you know that your opponent's keeping good stuff. So Shai identifies that with a nice Judge early, is able to establish Big Barrel and get a fresh 5-card hand thanks to an Ultra Ball, gets V-Star developed, and once again he's got Giratina ready to rumble here whilst initiating the prize race, and probably should take a prize at some point. Hopefully he does it while we notice. We are going to see some Flower Selectings and concealed cards. I definitely know we take the prize at some point. It's just whether or not it was during this turn or not. But we see Flower Selecting into Greninja into Switch Flower Select here. So I'm starting to fuel that Lost Zone. It's a second Lightning Energy, which does rule out Iron Hands to Arm Press, but doesn't rule out everything here. Going to see a Super Rod. Going to get Cram back into the mix as well as Lightning and Psychic. And we're going to Nest Ball that Cram. And I'm going to have to attach Retreat to this Confey by the looks of things. And just swing once again with Cramorant with that Spit Innocently. I wasn't able to get to 7 cards, so I wasn't able to get any gate shenanigans going. That Headquarters is still being so pesky for some of my attacking threats as well. Obviously, the Lost Provisions does get around this League Headquarters, so I am able to still attack for free. But it's not really the tempo I was looking for. It's going to be a 3-shot on this Arceus, which is never nice, and it means Shai can get an extra Trinity Nova in. We can see Shai actually did just take that prize. It was meant to take last turn. We also looked and it wasn't like a playable card, so he was able to take that prize, and now he's taking that second prize. So we are correct on the prize map. He is 2 prize cards ahead. He's knocked out Cramorant twice. So we're back in the right spot, which is good to see. That we were able to catch it. And that this footage is actually usable, which is kind of handy. We go back over to my side of things, and I have a Confey start and a few decisions as to what I want to put on this board. Looks like I'm debating this Nest Ball, depending on if I can get to 10 or not. So I think I have Sableye in hand as well, so that's also part of my consideration. Can I get Sableye into the mix here? Looks like Iron Bundle and Nest Ball are finding their way into the Lost Zone. We do see the Headquarters bounce. I believe that's 8 cards in the Lost Zone with this bundle, which is there. Shai just examining. I'm going to have a quick look with Artisan at some resources before making any other decisions. Also just scouting what energy I can pull out of the deck here for best use. I'm a little concerned that Giratina's ready to go and possibly can take out this Raikou at any given moment. Maybe I'm trying to get Iron Hands in the mix here. Best case scenario, I could amp you very much for 3 prizes on this Arceus because I've damaged it so heavily. Failing that, I try and get to 10. And I try and use Sableye here. Could also use Greninja this turn. With the Stadium Bounce, I could get a 90-90. This would finish off the Arceus and also set up another V-Star. Put it in slightly easier range, which is looking like what I'm spying here. Chorus into the gates, into the Confey. I saw Mirage Gates. It was up against Iron Hand, so now I completely lose the option to use Amp very much. But there was already a couple Lightning in there, and with League Headquarters, everything becomes more expensive anyway, and I'm already going down a few more gates now. So, makes sense to get rid of the Iron Hands at this stage. We are just going to gate a Psychic to retreat this Confey. I have the Water Energy to attach for the turn. Looks like we're fresh out of energy in the deck, though. Would have been really nice to preload this Sableye, but yeah, it's just going to be 90 onto the Giratina V-Star whilst finishing off the active Arceus. Pretty nice turn for me overall. Did have to spend a couple of gates to do this play, so again, resource intensive, but overall it's finally catching up on the prizes, which is important. Start to have a better look now at what resources I have available to me. with two lightning and a darkness gone. That is really rough. Looks like Shai has another Arceus, which is looking good. I think he wants to weave this in rather than have to use Giratina, because as with the first game, we saw it can be so painful to reuse that Giratina's attack over and over again, the Lost Impact. I think he has Judge and Switch in hand, and I think he's just debating what to go for here. Nest Ball as well in the hand. Could possibly like Nest Ball out Squover or something like that to start the turn, but it's going to go immediately for the Judge. Wants to be cautious of giving me too many single prizes. As with that first game, I was able to take out Bibarel and Bidoof, and it really helped me out. I was going to see the Judge for 4 cards. He does find an energy attachment, so that's nice. He can get the Trinity Nova in. And also he has an Arceus with 3 energy now that can deal with Raikou, because obviously not using Double Turbo in that mix. He Ultra Balls to fail the search and gets 5 cards from Bibarel. Looks like he's also debating benching this Arceus. And he's going to take the knockout. I think he double attached that turn, actually. There shouldn't be a double turbo on this Arceus on the bench. So that's something we'll have to keep track of. Either way, I'm going to Colress here. Yeah, I don't think it's going to come into play, but just the way the board's looking, I'm not going to be able to knock out this Arceus this turn anyway. I don't think. So I don't think it's going to come into play in terms of like lost impacts, but naughty Shai getting the attachment of Jet whilst also re-establishing an arc with an energy. I am going to continue to Flower Select here, trying to re-establish something here. Config can hit the Lost Zone. I think I have another switching out in the hand as well. I think I've got Prime Catcher as well in this hand. So emergency board means I can retreat into this Config. But I just don't think things are lining up here. I've got Rod in hand. Not sure if I have Gate, though. I have enough to Sableye, but I think I've just had a big miss. And I think this League Headquarters is what's making things rough here. I think I'd have an easy way to Sableye, were it not for this HQ. And you can see I'm having a real look at resources now. It looks like I'm going to have to make a trapping play to get anything done. I also have potential fleet-footed draw from Raikou. It looks like I'm just seeing what's at the bottom 7 and what's bad for me. I think I have 2 Gates and Forest Hill Stone in my bottom 7, and my basically just the big miss from my 3 flower selectings. It was pretty rough. So I believe I have exactly 7 cards in deck, and I have Forest Hill Stone double Gate. So if I play Prime Catcher and go into this Raikou, I have, you know, the 3 and 7 to actually have a play this turn. So we are going to make the play to bring up the Tina. If I was able to hit one of the outs, the 3 of 7, I could have KO'd this Tina and really put a ton of pressure on Shai to win in 2 attacks, right? I could finish off this Tina, then I could Roaring Moon, KO either Arceus on the bench. But the Fleet-Footed wasn't so lucky. So now I've had to spend Prime Catcher, then spend Counter Catcher to get this Bibarel into the active to just hope that Shai has no pivot out. So they've at least played a Jet and a Switch early, and then I'm going to protect Raikou, get that out of the way, and hope that I can buy a turn off of him. But yeah, the map really got foggy after that, and we see a Boss's Orders, which is going to make Shai's life so much more easy here. He can pay retreat out this Bib, and he can just KO this Raikou pretty happily and go down to 1. And I'm not seeing a great way of closing the game without another big trapping line here and it lasting for an unholy amount of turns. So Shai goes down to just 1 prize card remaining, was able to move the Bibarel with not too much trouble here. And we're going to start selecting. Lightning Energy goes. I have Psychic for Sableye now, but I think this stadium is still putting in work against us. There goes Buddy Poffin. And yeah, I think it's really just a story of things not coming together. Too many good cards at the bottom of my deck meant that Shai's going to be able to, with help of the Judge and the whatnot, has just slowed me down 1 too many turns, and it's just going to get over the line here. I think I have 2 cards in deck now. I think I've just had Gate up against Gate, so I had to get my last Gate established as well. So yeah, I'm just really low on resources, and my only way to dig is Confei, which just like also hinders me so much because I'm having to get rid of the important things that were at the bottom of the deck. It's going to be a panic boss onto the big barrel. I have to get that turn attachment in on Sableye, and we have to just get to work on this Tina and hope for the best. But Shai at this point is just looking for a switch out, which shouldn't be too difficult for him. I think he's got Ultra Ball, so we can go Squovit here and reset and draw a lot of cards with incisors. We'll see how things go here. I really need this barrel to be trapped for like a while, to be honest with you. I think there's definitely double turbo in the deck. There's also Professor Churro, but also Iron Leaves, which brings itself into the active position as well. And with enough grass energy in play, it can even take non-grass energy. And it can yoink energy for itself and just get the KO. So yeah, Ultra Ball does it just with Iron Leaves EX, which is somewhat in here for the Charizard matchup. That's kind of its primary function, but also can be great against Snorlax and other trapping decks, just because it essentially gives itself an extra switch out in the deck, which Shai used to great effect there. So yeah, a 1-1 in the end with the Arceus and Lost Box. Let's get into some other considerations. Looking at some other considerations for Arceus then, Radiant Gardevoir does give both of your V-Stars that little bit of added bulk so that you stay out of Giratina's range, which is really handy. So if you expect the Mirror Match or Lost Zone build to Giratina, it could be worth the inclusion. There are some other supporter cards we certainly could consider. Cryptomaniac does have good synergy, especially when we're already leaning into that Big Barrel and Squovit. I wouldn't ever really play this in high counts in the deck list, but it could be seen as a one-off just to cherry pick some key cards. Similar to the Professor Churro scenario, Sharon's Care could find its way in the deck list for picking up and putting down Arceus so that you can lean into the tanky nature of this deck and try and undo some turns of damage. Grabber was seen in one of the most successful builds in the Champions League. This can inform your Eerie supporter, which is a really interesting thing to have in the deck list, and further adds to the disruption of Judge in your list as well. TM Devolution also kind of works alongside the new Eerie supporter, just because every now and then you can snipe rare candies out the opponent's hand, and then a TM Devo becomes that much more devastating in the mid game. And then stadiums are also up for debate. The League HQ obviously put in a lot of work in our set just then, but there's still certainly an argument to working in Lost City for being a more versatile disruption option, or Collapse Stadium to give yourself another potential means of healing and disrupting your opponent's board. As for Lost Zone, I think there are a number of other considerations. I think my biggest question mark with the deck list is stadiums, actually. Artisan never felt all that powerful other than just being a stadium bump, and I think especially with emergency board in deck lists now, Town Store gets a huge bump in value because it can get your early Forest Seal Stone for consistency, but can also act as essentially an extra switch out in the opening stages to dance between your com phase, which I think is a pretty big deal, and could also let you get even more versatile with a tool package, possibly even looking at a Crisis Punch being a late game threat in the list. Pokestop could also be another option here where you simply give yourself more dig throughout the game. It's never really a bad thing when we're always trying to make the Super Rod gate combos happen, especially now because we don't necessarily need boss's orders in the deck list. We can rely on item-based Gust from Counter and Prime Catcher, so Pokestop can harm us even less than in the past. Ditto, in theory, gets a huge buff from Buddy Buddy Poffin being in the format because it can be an option that we get in the opening stages and simply transform ourselves into a higher hit point Pokemon if we get Ditto into the active position. This is actually a little bit more niche than you may first expect. Oftentimes this will end up just being another Comfort anyway, just to get into the mix, and we never really want to play more than one copy of Cramorant, and if you don't play that single copy, all of your Flower Selectings or Colrus essentially become Death Selectings as soon as you commit a Ditto to your board, because at any point if you just see Cramorant in those opening stages, you then give yourself a dead slot on the bench, which is never something that you really want to have. Manaphy is another lower hit point consideration card. There is still going to be a decent amount of Radiant Greninja around, certainly if you expect Chien-Pao to be going up in popularity, as well as possibly Goldengo and other Lost Box variants, of course. So having that little bit of protection is always something to consider. We could also try and change up that energy count and give ourselves one-hit KO options via Iron Leaves. It's not something I've seen a huge amount of, but simply because we have Mirage Gate in the deck, and because Iron Leaves puts itself into the active position, it does have naturally decent synergy with the Lost Zone archetype. And if you expect Charizard to be really, really popular, it might be worth justifying. Quick note on the likes of Palpad and Energy Retrieval, even with Quad Super Rod, with Eerie in formats, and with so much hand disruption, and the loss of Raihan, I do think Energy Retrieval could be a useful one-of. It gives you an extra Greninja dig, but also gives you one of those energy directly to a turn attach alongside your Mirage Gates. And the Palpad's certainly going to be helpful and a mandatory include if you do go down a Pokestop-based route, just a natural great way to protect yourself against mid and late game Iono. Let me know your thoughts on both Arceus and Lost Box. How are they going to be performing in the new format? Where do you think they fit in amongst the top decks in the game? Let me hear your thoughts down below, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.